Hey everyone! Ready to dive deep into the world of Home Alone 3? Released on December 12, 1997, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. While most people remember the Home Alone franchise for the unforgettable antics of Kevin McAllister, Home Alone 3 took a bold turn. With a new cast, new villains, and a fresh storyline, this third installment dared to reimagine the formula, shifting from the holiday charm of Chicago suburbia into a more espionage-infused adventure. But even with these changes, it never lost the essence of what makes the franchise iconic: clever traps, unlikely heroes, and a battle of wits between a kid and a team of bumbling criminals. This time, it's not Kevin, but Alex Pruitt, a young boy living in Chicago's quiet North Side, who finds himself in the middle of a dangerous game of international intrigue. Played by Alex D. Linz, Alex is just as resourceful, brave, and mischievous as the character that came before him, but what makes him stand out is his grounded charm. Unlike Kevin's extravagant lifestyle, Alex comes from a working-class family, and that subtle shift brings a more relatable tone to the film. The plot kicks off not with a family vacation gone wrong, but with a microchip. Yes, a top-secret microchip that's been stolen by a group of international spies working for a North Korean terrorist organization. Their mission? Smuggle the chip hidden inside a toy car. But fate has other plans. Thanks to a mix-up at airport security, the toy ends up in the hands of Mrs. Hess, an elderly neighbor of Alex, who unknowingly gifts it to the boy for shoveling her driveway. That's when things start to spiral. While the original films played with the idea of home defense against petty burglars, Home Alone 3 elevates the stakes. These aren't your run-of-the-mill wet bandits. The villains, Peter Beaupre, Alice Ribbons, Burton Janigan, and Earl Unger, are highly trained operatives with military-grade equipment and a mission that could endanger national security. Yet, in true Home Alone fashion, they're hilariously inept when faced with the one obstacle they didn't see coming: an 8-year-old with a genius for engineering booby traps. What's fascinating is how the movie carefully sets up Alex as someone far from ordinary. He's intelligent, observant, and more importantly, recovering from chickenpox, which keeps him out of school, and in the perfect position to witness the strange activities happening in his neighborhood. When he notices the suspicious men lurking around, breaking into houses in broad daylight, no one believes him. Not his mother, not the police, not even his siblings. But Alex doesn't back down. Armed with binoculars, his pet rat, and a camera, Alex becomes a one-kid surveillance team, documenting every move the spies make. The film brilliantly builds tension as Alex pieces the puzzle together while the audience watches the villains grow increasingly desperate to retrieve the chip. The contrast between the cold efficiency of the spies and the heartwarming warmth of Alex's world makes the eventual showdown feel even more satisfying. Director Rya Gosnell, known for editing the first 2 Home Alone films, stepped into the director's chair for this one. His familiarity with the franchise allowed him to maintain the series' slapstick humor while giving it a slicker, slightly more action-oriented style. The traps are no longer just toys and paint cans. Alex uses rigged lawnmowers, electric shocks, firecrackers, and even a clever pulley system that transforms his suburban home into a fortress of chaos. Each trap is designed with an attention to cause and effect that feels almost like watching a Rube Goldberg machine in motion. There's a sense of gleeful creativity in how Alex predicts and counters every move of the villains, turning their own strengths against them. And unlike previous entries, where parents eventually realize something's wrong and rush back, this time the entire climax hinges on Alex's self-reliance. The climax is a masterclass in comic tension. As the spies break into the house, expecting an easy retrieval mission, they're met with a gauntlet of pain and humiliation. There's a cathartic pleasure in watching professionals be completely undone by a kid with string and tape. And just when it seems like things can't get more chaotic, Alex calls in the cavalry, not his parents, but the FBI, whom he'd already contacted and provided with crucial evidence. It's a bold move that redefines the idea of helpless child and shows that courage isn't about size. It's about smarts, heart, and timing. Of course, No Home Alone film would be complete without a warm ending, and here too the film delivers. As the villains are arrested and the chip is recovered, Alex is finally recognized for the hero he is. His family, once skeptical, are humbled and grateful. And there's a small but powerful moment where Mrs. Hess, initially grumpy and dismissive, softens, showing that even in a world filled with spies and conspiracies, kindness still has a place. Though Home Alone 3 often flies under the radar compared to its predecessors, it remains a unique gem. It dared to take the franchise in a new direction, and while it may not have the holiday magic or iconic status of the originals, it delivers a tightly wound, inventive story that stands strong on its own merits. Alex Pruitt's journey isn't just about defending his home. It's about proving that even the smallest among us can make the biggest impact. Back in the late 90s, the name Home Alone already held legendary status. With the colossal success of the first two films, both centered around the clever and fearless Kevin McAllister, audiences were more than familiar with the formula. A young boy, left alone, using a chaotic arsenal of household items to defend his home from clueless burglars. But in 1997, the franchise took a bold detour. Home Alone 3 emerged not just as a sequel, but as a full-on reinvention. A different kid, a different story, and an entirely different threat. And yet, despite stepping out from the shadow of the beloved original cast and creators, this film dared to play with a bigger sandbox and infuse the iconic formula with fresh twists. What makes Home Alone 3 so fascinating is how it repackaged everything fans loved: booby traps, a clever protagonist, slapstick hilarity, into a new adventure that balanced both tension and charm, espionage and innocence. Instead of simply copying the magic of Macaulay Culkin's run, the filmmakers reimagined what it meant to be home alone. This time, it wasn't about Christmas or forgotten trips. It was about something far more accidental, yet dangerous: a child inadvertently getting caught up in international crime. And at the center of it all is Alex Pruitt, played by Alex D. Linz. A kid who, despite being homebound with chickenpox, ends up shouldering the weight of a high-stakes espionage plot. There's something instantly endearing about Alex. He's not larger-than-life or overly precocious. He's just a clever, observant, sweet kid with a knack for tinkering. Where Kevin McAllister had charm and mischief, Alex brings heart and curiosity. He's the kind of protagonist who wins you over not because he's over the top, but because he feels real, grounded in the world of his neighborhood, his family, and his small yet significant challenges. The premise kicks off with an intense airport handoff gone wrong. A highly sophisticated microchip, meant for a US missile cloaking system, is stolen by a quartet of international criminals working for a North Korean terrorist faction. These aren't your everyday cartoonish burglars. Peter Beaupre, Alice Ribbons, Burton Jennigan, and Earl Unger are cold, calculating, and methodical. They're specialists with access to cutting-edge tech, capable of slipping past security checkpoints and executing high-stakes operations. But their mission is undone by the smallest twist of fate. The chip, hidden inside a remote-controlled car, gets accidentally swapped at the airport and winds up in the hands of an elderly woman named Mrs. Hess, who unknowingly gives it to young Alex as payment for shoveling her driveway. What unfolds is a brilliant dance of suspense and comedy. The villains, unable to locate the chip's whereabouts, track their stolen package to a quiet Chicago suburb. Believing it's somewhere within the neighborhood, they begin searching house to house in broad daylight, masquerading as ordinary workers. Alex, stuck at home with chickenpox, becomes the only one who notices the strange behavior. With his telescope, his pet rat Doris, and an old video camera, Alex starts putting the pieces together. But when he tries to alert the adults, his mother, his older siblings, even the local authorities, no one believes him. To them, he's just a bored, imaginative kid stuck inside too long. But we know better. That's where the magic of Home Alone 3 truly kicks in. It's not just about a kid setting traps. It's about a kid taking control of a situation no one else sees. The film carefully balances Alex's youthful vulnerability with his innate brilliance. We see him constructing gadgets, rigging decoys, using walkie-talkies and rewired circuits, all with the wide-eyed determination of someone who refuses to be ignored. As the spies close in, Alex prepares his home for an all-out siege, creating an elaborate gauntlet of slapstick mayhem that fans of the franchise had come to expect, but with a fresh twist. What makes these traps so satisfying is how creatively grounded they are. This isn't just about paint cans on strings. Alex uses household items like glue, pet cages, toy cars, hairdryers, and garden tools to maximum effect. There's an almost engineering-like precision to how each trap works, setting off chain reactions that leave the villains confused, battered, and furious. Yet it never feels gratuitous, it feels earned. The build-up to the trap sequence is so tense and so well-developed that when the villains finally enter the house, it's like watching dominoes fall in glorious, comedic succession. Each member of the criminal crew experiences their own humiliating reckoning, and by the end, their carefully constructed plan is reduced to rubble, all thanks to one resourceful kid. Visually, the film plays with a lighter, suburban palette that contrasts beautifully with the looming threat of espionage. Director Rya Gosnell, making his debut here after editing the first 2 Home Alone films, brings a unique eye for comedic timing and kinetic pacing. The editing is crisp and efficient, especially during the trap sequences, and the cinematography cleverly toggles between the grounded perspective of a child and the sleek menace of international villains. One moment you're watching a kid nervously adjusting a camcorder, the next you're witnessing a high-stakes standoff with trained agents. This balance between scale and intimacy keeps the film thrilling without ever losing its sense of fun. Then there's the tone. While Home Alone 3 doesn't lean into the Christmas spirit like its predecessors, it crafts its own kind of warmth. It's about family in a different way. About a boy trying to prove himself to a world that underestimates him. About noticing danger when no one else does, and having the courage to act on it. Alex's relationship with his mom, played by Haviland Morris, adds another emotional layer to the film. She's a single working parent trying to juggle her job and her kids, and her struggle feels real. When she finally realizes what Alex has been going through, her reaction isn't played for drama, but understanding, and that makes their bond even stronger. Beyond the surface-level comedy, Home Alone 3 taps into something timeless, the fantasy of kids being heroes in a world ruled by adults. It reminds us of the ingenuity that comes from boredom, the strength that emerges when no one else is looking, and the surprising amount of bravery hidden in the most ordinary moments. There's a kind of wish fulfillment in watching someone so young outsmart professional criminals, not with brute force, but with creativity, courage, and persistence. Though the movie didn't receive the same box office acclaim or critical praise as its predecessors, it quickly developed a cult following, especially among a younger generation who discovered it on home video or cable reruns. Over time, fans began to appreciate its distinct tone, inventive pacing, and the fact that it refused to live in the shadow of the earlier films. It stands as a curious outlier, one that dared to break the mold while honoring the spirit of the original. And let's not forget the villains. Unlike Harry and Marv, who were goofy from the outset, the spy team in Home Alone 3 starts off as a serious threat. That makes their eventual unraveling all the more enjoyable. Watching these highly trained operatives get taken down by a kid's homemade contraptions is not just funny, it's deeply satisfying. It's a slow-burn humiliation that turns the genre on its head. They're the bad guys with gadgets and strategy. Here's the kid with string and cereal boxes. And he wins. The final act is both exhilarating and hilarious, with trap after trap firing off like perfectly timed dominoes. Whether it's Alice getting blasted with a sprinkler, Peter getting electrocuted, or Jernigan falling victim to a lawnmower attack, the payoffs are brilliantly constructed. The comedy is physical, but not mindless. Every consequence feels tailor-made for its victim, and Alex's understanding of each villain's behavior allows him to design a battleground that dismantles them piece by piece. When the FBI shows up in the end, it's not the usual too-late rescue. Alex had already contacted them. He did the work. He sent the evidence. He's not saved, he saves the day. That subtle inversion of the usual kid gets lucky trope reinforces the idea that Alex isn't just a stand-in for Kevin. He's a new kind of hero for a new kind of story. One grounded in modern fears, like terrorism and surveillance, but delivered with heart and humor. In the years since its release, Home Alone 3 has often been unfairly dismissed as the odd one out in the franchise. But for those who give it a second look, It's clear that the film holds its own as a unique chapter, one that took risks, aimed higher, and wasn't afraid to flip the script. It introduced a new generation to the idea that intelligence can be more powerful than muscle, and that even when no one believes in you, you can still rise to the occasion. So if you've never seen Home Alone 3, or maybe haven't watched it in years, give it another shot. Look past the change in cast and tone, and see the smart, inventive heart at its core. It's a film that proves the franchise wasn't just about nostalgia or holidays. It was about the universal thrill of a kid taking charge, rewriting the rules, and turning the tables on the grown-ups. And isn't that what made Home Alone magical to begin with? Everything begins not in a cozy suburban home, but in a bustling airport on the edge of a covert operation. A top-secret microchip, one capable of cloaking missiles from radar, is at the center of an international game of espionage. In San Francisco, a team of elite operatives executes a daring heist, stealing the chip with surgical precision and hiding it inside a seemingly harmless remote-controlled toy car. It's a move so simple, so ingenious, that no one would suspect it. Their mission: deliver the chip to a terrorist group waiting on the other side of the world. But their plan unravels the moment fate intervenes. At the airport, the toy car accidentally ends up in the luggage of Mrs. Hess, a grumpy and peculiar elderly woman traveling back home to Chicago. She picks up the wrong bag, unaware she's carrying something of immense value. By the time the operatives, Peter Beaupre, Alice Ribbons, Burton Janigan, and Earl Unger, realize what's happened, it's already too late. The chip is on a plane, flying thousands of miles away, nestled in a toy that now belongs to a quiet neighborhood kid named Alex Pruitt. Alex, recovering from a case of chickenpox, is stuck at home while the rest of the world goes on without him. His days are long and lonely, filled with boredom, itching, and frustration. But he's not the type to sit still. Even in his confinement, Alex is alert, observant, the kind of kid who notices things others miss. His family, an overworked mother, a distracted father away on business, and two older siblings who'd rather tease than help, has no idea just how sharp he really is. One snowy day, Mrs. Hess arrives on Alex's doorstep. Cranky and impatient, she demands he shovel her driveway, offering a small reward in return. It's a cold and quiet exchange, but one that alters everything. As thanks for his work, she gives Alex the toy car, unaware of what's hidden inside. To him, it's just a cool remote-controlled car. To the spies now surveilling the neighborhood, it's the missing link to their entire mission. Meanwhile, the four operatives arrive in Chicago. They've narrowed the location of the chip to Mrs. Hess's street and begin surveilling each house, one by one, using high-tech gadgets and cold efficiency to blend in. They pose as telephone workers, delivery drivers, home inspectors, anything to access the homes without suspicion. It's methodical, clinical, and yet, with every house they enter and search, the pressure mounts. The longer they take, the more exposed they become. And then there's the wild card, the boy across the street with the telescope. From his bedroom window, Alex starts noticing strange things. A van parked too long. A man entering a neighbor's home while they're at work. Unusual figures moving in and out with walkie-talkies and toolboxes. At first, it all seems random, but Alex's curiosity won't let it go. He starts documenting what he sees, logging the comings and goings, and soon, a pattern begins to form. These aren't ordinary service workers. These people are looking for something, and they're getting closer. When Alex sees them break into a neighbor's house in broad daylight, he knows he has to act. He calls the police, reports the incident. But by the time authorities arrive, the intruders are gone without a trace. No signs of forced entry, no damage, no proof. To everyone else, Alex seems like a bored kid with an overactive imagination. The adults brush it off. His mother, juggling her job and 3 children, doesn't have time to entertain wild theories. Even his siblings mock him. But Alex knows what he saw. Determined, he sets up his own surveillance operation. He rigs his room with gadgets, a makeshift command center with binoculars, camcorders, walkie-talkies, and homemade alarms. Every time the van appears, every time someone suspicious enters a house, he records it. The spies, unaware they're being watched, continue their methodical search. They break into one house, then the next. They're getting closer with each attempt, but time is running out. They know the chip is in the neighborhood, but they don't know whose hands it's in. Yet. Then comes the breakthrough. Alex plays with the toy car for the first time. As he guides it through the house, he accidentally triggers a small panel on the underside and notices something strange. A faint blinking light, wires, and what looks like a circuit board. He pries it open. Hidden inside the toy is the microchip. He doesn't know what it is yet, but instinct tells him it's important. Maybe even dangerous. That same day, the spies spot the car in his driveway. And just like that, Alex becomes their new target. The tone shifts. There's now a sense of tightening dread. We see the spies regroup, recalibrating their plan. They've been trying to work subtly, avoiding exposure, but with the chip confirmed, subtlety is no longer an option. They mark Alex's house. They prepare to strike. But Alex, growing more certain that something big is happening, escalates his own response. He doesn't just record anymore, he investigates. He builds decoys, leaves the toy car in open view to see who'll come for it. And when one of the spies enters his backyard, creeping toward the house, Alex springs his first trap. It's small, just a simple setup involving motion sensors and a homemade sprinkler system. But it works. The intruder flees, drenched and humiliated. Alex has officially declared war. What makes this first half so electric is the way it builds slowly, almost like a thriller. We see the line between childish imagination and real danger blur, and the film cleverly plays with the audience's expectations. You start to wonder, is anyone going to believe him in time? Can a kid really take on professional criminals? It teases that question until you stop asking, because Alex never hesitates. He believes himself, and that's enough. As tension builds, the contrast between Alex and the spies grows more defined. They're precise, expressionless, dressed in black and gray. He's messy, covered in calamine lotion, wearing a sweatshirt and a fanny pack full of gadgets. It's the classic underdog scenario, dialed up for maximum suspense. The next time Alex calls the police, he gives them recorded footage. He's got timestamps. He's tracked the van's license plate. But again, the spies stay one step ahead, wiping away the evidence before anyone else can see it. Alex begins to realize, if he's going to stop them, he'll have to do it himself. The turning point comes when his mother is called away to work, leaving Alex home alone for the day. It's the first time he's completely on his own. The house is quiet, the snow is falling, and outside, the spies are ready. They're moving in. And Alex? He's already 10 steps ahead. Every room has been transformed into a trap-laden maze. There's string crisscrossing the hallways, buckets balanced on shelves, firecrackers taped to toy cars, glue bottles rigged to burst. He's not just waiting, he's inviting them in. What began as boredom has become a full-blown defense strategy. Every toy is a weapon, every doorway a challenge. And as the spies begin their final approach, creeping closer to the house with the confidence of professionals, they have no idea what's waiting inside. The first half of Home Alone 3 closes with the sense that the pieces are all in place. The boy is alone. The enemies are closing in. And the quiet Chicago neighborhood, dusted in snow and silence, is about to become a battleground. It's not just a rehash of what came before. It's something bolder, more deliberate. The traps haven't been sprung yet, but the fuse has been lit. The moment that door opens, everything changes. And through it all, we're watching a new kind of hero take shape. Not because he's the loudest or the strongest, but because he refuses to be ignored. Because when everyone else turns away, he leans in. Alex Pruitt isn't just defending his home. He's proving that courage doesn't always come with a badge or a uniform. Sometimes, it comes with chickenpox, duct tape, and a whole lot of determination. The snow has fallen heavier now. The whole neighborhood is coated in white, soft and still. But inside the Pruitt house, it's anything but peaceful. Alex has transformed his home into a fortress, not just out of panic or paranoia, but with precision, thought, and heart. Every hallway is rigged, Every window is booby-trapped. And just outside, the 4 professional spies think they're approaching a quiet, empty house. What they don't realize is that their well-oiled plan is about to unravel at the hands of an 8-year-old boy armed with toy cars, ropes, paint cans, and a whole lot of grit. As the operatives split up and circle the house, their movements mirror their confidence. They've broken into mansions, slipped past security systems, and stolen military-grade tech. This is just a house. Just a kid. They don't even speak, communicating through hand signals and practiced looks, each one taking a side of the building, prepared to converge in total synchronization. But the moment one of them tries to pry open the basement window, the first trap is sprung. A massive glue and feather explosion erupts in his face, leaving him blinded, flailing, looking less like a spy and more like a cartoon chicken. From there, everything begins to spiral. Earl, attempting to sneak in through the back door, slips on black ice deliberately poured onto the steps. He crashes into a trash can rigged with fireworks that explode with a deafening bang. Janigan, trying to climb the fence, is blasted with green paint from a hidden canister Alex wired to a motion sensor. And Alice, perhaps the sharpest of the 4, picks the front lock only to be met with a bucket of tar dropping from the ceiling, followed by a board of nails under her feet. Each of them, one by one, is met with a child's worst nightmare turned into a tactician's battlefield. What's remarkable here isn't just the creativity of the traps, it's how Alex mirrors their professionalism. He's no longer just reacting. He's outsmarting them, anticipating their every move. He moves through the house like a commander, checking cameras, resetting traps, and even taunting the intruders through the toy car's speaker system. The line between child and hero starts to blur, and for the first time, the spies start to feel fear. Still, they regroup, trying to cut off power, silence the alarms, and communicate through their van. But even the van isn't safe. Alex planted a trap there too, a remote-controlled detonation of stinky paint spray and marbles. Their HQ is compromised. Their confidence falters. Inside, the energy builds. Alex knows he's buying time. But for what? The police haven't believed him before, and he can't count on them now. So he sets his sights higher. He uses his father's old transceiver radio and manages to contact an Air Force recruitment office, pretending to be his father and reporting a national security breach. At first, it sounds like the ramblings of a prank caller, until Alex begins describing the chip in exact technical detail. It's enough to raise eyebrows. Authorities begin tracing the call, uncertain of its origin but aware that something real might be unfolding. Back at home, the spies manage to breach the basement. They're soaked, bruised, and humiliated, but still dangerous. They've ditched subtlety. The mission is now brute force. But every attempt to move deeper into the house is thwarted by another trap. Tripwires that release swinging bowling balls, laundry chutes filled with ice, superglue smeared doorknobs, and hot wiring that leaves them howling in pain. One of the most brutal moments comes when Peter Beaupre, the leader, finds himself suspended upside down by a hidden rope snare, spinning slowly above a pit of nails, his face dripping with egg yolk and shaving cream. And yet, amidst the chaos, there's tension. Real stakes. Because Alex isn't invincible. He's clever, but he's still a child, and when the team finally corners him in the attic, it feels like the end. He tries to crawl out the window, but Alice grabs his ankle, pulling him back inside. For a second, the entire plan feels like it's falling apart. But then, the turning point, the microchip. Alex, still holding it in his pocket, dangles it out the attic window. "Let me go," he threatens, "or I throw it into the snow and we all lose." The moment hangs in the air. The operatives freeze. They know he means it. And it's that bluff, that one act of fearless nerve, that buys Alex the final second he needs. He activates his final trap, a pulley system that swings a trunk into the attic door, slamming it shut and locking the agents inside. He escapes down a rope made of bedsheets, sprinting into the yard just as sirens scream in the distance. The police have arrived, this time with federal agents. And behind them, black SUVs. The Air Force. The scene turns from chaos to control in moments. The house is surrounded. The spies are captured. The chip is retrieved. And Alex Pruitt, bruised, breathless, still clutching the remote control to his car, is hailed not just as a local hero, but a national one. The emotional payoff hits in the aftermath. His mother arrives home in a panic, frantic and furious, only to be met with the sight of military officers shaking her son's hand. Her expression melts from anger to awe, realizing what her child has just survived, what he's just done. His siblings, too, stand in quiet disbelief. They never believed him, but now they see him for what he truly is, not just the little brother stuck at home with chickenpox, but the kid who took down 4 international criminals with a toy car, a box of tools, and the kind of courage you can't teach. And then, in true Home Alone spirit, comes the moment of reflection. Not loud or dramatic, but gentle. Alex sits by the window as snow falls outside, his telescope pointed once again toward the street. The world is quiet. His house, battered and messy, still stands. His parents gather around him, grateful. The chaos has passed. The danger is over. And as the music swells, we realize something that makes this installment of the series so unique. It's not about being left behind, but about stepping up when no one else can. It's about bravery in the face of real fear, about using what you have, however small, to fight back. What makes this second half so powerful is how it balances humor with tension. The traps are wild, yes, but the stakes are real. These aren't bumbling burglars, they're dangerous criminals. And yet, the film never loses its heart. It lets Alex shine not just through pranks, but through strategy, resilience, and instinct. It lets us believe that being small doesn't mean being powerless. That even when no one believes in you, you can still make a difference. And when the credits roll, it's not just satisfaction we feel, it's pride. Pride in this kid who never gave up, who fought not just to protect his home, but to prove that even the smallest voices can change the course of something much, much bigger. Home Alone the 3rd of May have arrived without Kevin McAllister, without the McAllister chaos or the New York City spectacle. But it delivered something different, something bold. It gave us a new kind of hero, in a new kind of fight, and showed us that sometimes, the third time really is the charm. It's easy to overlook the emotional weight of a movie like Home Alone 3, especially when the surface is decorated with slapstick humor, wild traps, and colorful chaos. But at its heart, the film thrives because of its characters, their motivations, their chemistry, and the way they evolve throughout the story. These aren't just archetypes moving through a comedic caper. They are people, each with their own battles, pride, and vulnerabilities, brought to life with subtlety and surprising depth. Let's begin with Alex Pruitt, the beating heart of the film. From the first moment we meet him, wrapped in blankets, dealing with chickenpox, there's a different energy to him compared to past protagonists in the franchise. He's not mischievous by nature. He doesn't long to be alone or take pleasure in rebellion. He's quiet, curious, observant. He spends his time watching the world through a telescope, not because he's nosy, but because he's fascinated. This is a boy who sees patterns, who sees details, who sees everything. Alex's journey begins with invisibility, not in the literal sense, but in the emotional one. His illness forces him to stay home while the world moves on. His family is busy, distracted. His mother is juggling work, household responsibilities, and Alex's care. His father is away on business. His siblings treat him like a nuisance. And so when Alex starts noticing suspicious activity in the neighborhood, when he starts putting pieces together that nobody else seems to see, he's met not with concern or curiosity, but with doubt, dismissal, and impatience. This is where the beauty of Alex's arc shines. He's not trying to prove himself out of pride. He's trying to be heard. His journey isn't about setting traps for fun. It's about taking action when no one else will. He feels the weight of responsibility that others brush aside. And it's this quiet, growing resolve that turns him from a sick kid stuck at home into a full-fledged protagonist. Alex is driven by a moral compass, a need to do the right thing, even if it means standing alone. And Jake Lloyd, in one of his earliest roles before his Star Wars fame, brings a unique vulnerability to the part. He never overplays the moments. He doesn't try to be Kevin McAllister. Instead, He grounds Alex in sincerity. Every line is believable. Every reaction feels authentic. His performance walks the line between childlike innocence and burgeoning bravery, and it's what gives the film its soul. Opposite him are the villains, not goofy, exaggerated thieves this time, but cold, calculated professionals. Peter Beaupre, Alice Ribbons, Earl Unger, and Burton Janigan are international operatives with a mission: recover a stolen microchip disguised inside a toy car. They don't laugh. They don't stumble around cracking jokes. They don't bicker with cartoonish timing. Their presence feels real, dangerous. And that's what makes the stakes in this film feel so different. Peter Beaupre, the group's leader, is calm and methodical. He rarely speaks, but when he does, it's with quiet menace. His motivation is clear: retrieve the chip, complete the mission, disappear. He doesn't underestimate Alex at first, but he certainly doesn't expect resistance. That arrogance becomes his undoing. As the film progresses, his confidence unravels. What starts as control turns to frustration, then humiliation, then desperation. But never once does he break into caricature. The performance is restrained, unnerving, and grounded in realism. Alice Ribbons is perhaps the most interesting of the quartet. Sharp, analytical, and dangerously intelligent, she's the one constantly recalculating the situation. While Beaupre leads, Alice adapts. There are moments where you almost feel her stepping up as the real brain behind the operation. When things go wrong, she's the one trying to restore order. She questions strategies, calls out mistakes, and tries to reassert control. But like the others, she underestimates Alex's ability to plan, to manipulate the environment. By the end, when she's drenched in tar, limping through the chaos of a suburban battlefield, you see the cracks in her armor. Then there's Earl Unger and Burton Janigan. The muscle. The ones meant to handle the dirty work. While their dynamic allows for moments of physical comedy, slipping, stumbling, getting blasted with paint or hit with swinging brooms, there's always that edge of danger. These aren't harmless goons. Their reactions to failure aren't humorous for them. They're angry, humiliated, desperate. And that makes their defeat even more satisfying. They aren't just falling into traps, they're being outsmarted by a child, and they hate it. What's fascinating about the villains collectively is how their motivation never really changes. They don't suddenly become emotional or grow sentimental. They're consistent, cold professionals, undone by their own overconfidence. And that gives Alex's victory more weight. He didn't just win against idiots. He dismantled professionals through intelligence, creativity, and patience. Outside the core conflict, the supporting characters play subtle but significant roles in shaping the emotional tone of the film. Karen Pruitt, Alex's mother, is a character many parents might resonate with. Played with authenticity and heart, she's constantly torn between the demands of work and the guilt of leaving her sick child at home. She's not neglectful, she's overwhelmed. You can see it in her eyes, in the way she rushes home after Alex calls the police, only to find no threat. She wants to believe him, but she's exhausted. Her arc isn't about transformation, it's about recognition. And when she finally sees what Alex has endured, what has protected them from, the pride in her eyes says more than any line of dialogue could. Then there's Stan, the neighbor across the street, who initially serves as a red herring, a quiet figure whose routines Alex scrutinizes. He represents how easy it is to misjudge people, how perception can cloud reality. But he also represents the broader theme of watching, of paying attention. Stan does nothing wrong, but Alex learns through him that not everything suspicious is criminal, and not everything ignored is safe. Alex's siblings, Molly and Stan Pruitt, are typical older siblings, sarcastic, impatient, often dismissive. They mock him, ignore his concerns, and treat him like a nuisance. But their role is essential in framing Alex's loneliness. Their attitude reinforces the idea that Alex must face everything alone. And when they return at the end, shocked and stunned by the truth, their silence becomes validation. They don't apologize. They don't have to. Their respect is earned through stillness. Even the secondary figures, the police officer who's tired of false alarms, the babysitter who's distracted by teenage drama, the teacher on the other end of the phone, contribute to Alex's isolation. Not one adult takes him seriously until it's too late. And yet, that only enhances the triumph when he proves them all wrong. The film's brilliance lies in how it subtly mirrors adult archetypes through Alex. He becomes the strategist, the protector, the communicator. The more the adults fail him, the more he rises to fill the gap. And in doing so, he forces the audience to reevaluate their perception of what strength looks like. It's not just brawn or age, it's insight, awareness, empathy. And that's what makes his character arc feel so rewarding. In many ways, Home Alone 3 isn't just a story about traps and thieves. It's a story about being believed. About the frustration of being right when no one listens. About finding the courage to act anyway. Alex doesn't become someone new by the end of the film. He becomes more fully himself. And everyone around him finally sees it. That's what makes these characters unforgettable. They don't just exist to move the plot forward. They reflect deeper truths about trust, resilience, and how we respond when we're forced to stand alone. The performances breathe life into those truths, never overstated, never played for cheap laughs. Every smirk, every sigh, every glance carries meaning. When you strip away the comedy, the gadgets, the physical gags, you're left with a character-driven narrative that holds more weight than most expect. It's not a story of abandonment like the previous films. It's a story of agency, of stepping into power. And it's that shift in tone, in focus, that gives Home Alone 3 its lasting impact. Whether you first watched it as a kid and laughed at the paint explosions, or returned to it as an adult and caught the quieter moments, the emotional beats that hide between the chaos, it's clear that this film knows its characters. And that's why it still matters. It's tempting to dismiss Home Alone 3 as simply another entry in a family-friendly franchise known for its inventive traps and childlike mischief. But buried beneath the surface are dozens of layered details that reward close attention and reward the viewer who dares to look past the slapstick. From subtle callbacks to the original films to culturally loaded references and delicate foreshadowing, this third installment reveals far more on repeat viewings than many might expect. It's a film that knows its audience is watching, and it plays with that awareness in clever and often quietly brilliant ways. Right from the start, the film lets us know this isn't just a rehash of Kevin McAllister's adventures. The opening airport sequence feels unusually quiet, even controlled, almost like a cold open from a spy thriller. There's an almost surgical precision in the way the microchip is stolen and hidden, and this seriousness is a tonal shift. A nod to the idea that the world Alex Pruitt is about to step into is different, more dangerous. But even within this scene, the filmmakers are having fun. The toy car in which the stolen chip is hidden is no random choice. Its red, white, and blue color scheme not only aligns with patriotic symbolism, it subtly connects to the idea that this chip is not just valuable, but tied to national security. It becomes more than a toy, it's a symbol of American ingenuity in the hands of a child, mirroring the film's core theme, underestimated power. When the toy car ends up in Alex's possession, there's a moment where the camera lingers on his hands, cradling the car almost like a soldier holding a weapon he doesn't yet understand. It's shot low, placing Alex in a position of significance. On first glance, it's just a child playing. But there's intention in that framing. He's holding the very thing the world's most skilled operatives are hunting, and he doesn't even know it yet. That quiet irony lays the foundation for a film built on misdirection and awareness. Throughout the film, there are tiny moments where the filmmakers layer in foreshadowing, often disguised as humor or offhanded dialogue. Early on, when Alex is first seen tinkering with his telescope and walkie-talkie setup, he jokes with his pet rat, Doris, about becoming an undercover agent. It's a throwaway line, but it plants the seed of his transformation. He's not just a sick kid stuck at home. He's about to become a one-man intelligence network. Later, when his mom leaves for work and reminds him to rest, there's a look exchanged that seems small at first. But it's the same look she gives him much later, after everything's unfolded, when she finally sees the hero he's become. It's a mirrored gesture, quiet, maternal, and deeply emotional when viewed in retrospect. The use of technology in the film is also telling. Unlike Kevin McAllister, who relied on VHS tapes and toy talkbacks, Alex is in the early stages of the digital age. His remote-controlled car, his ability to hack together surveillance systems using household electronics, it's a nod to a shift in how kids are interacting with the world. It's a cultural marker of the late 90s, when curiosity met technology in the hands of a younger generation. The scenes of Alex using his telescope and radio systems echo themes from films like Rear Window, where observation becomes power. And just like Hitchcock's classic, Alex is dismissed until his watchfulness uncovers the truth. The callback is deliberate. This isn't just a family comedy. It's a quiet homage to a cinematic tradition of overlooked heroes using their minds instead of muscles. Even the layout of Alex's neighborhood is filled with subtle cues. The houses are similar, almost indistinguishable in their architecture. This is intentional. It creates a maze for both Alex and the intruders, where identity and location blur. It also reflects how easy it is to overlook danger when everything looks normal. And in that sameness, Alex thrives. He understands his environment so well that he can manipulate it. He turns his home and its surroundings into a chessboard, and the villains never realize they're playing until they're already cornered. A particularly brilliant piece of foreshadowing occurs when Alex first notices something odd across the street. The elderly neighbor's routine appears disrupted. A curtain twitches, a light flickers at the wrong time, a person moves where no one should be. All these signs build tension, but they also mimic what Kevin McAllister experienced in the first Home Alone film with Old Man Marley. It's a nod to the audience, a way of saying, look again. Things aren't always what they seem. Except here, the twist is flipped. The old man isn't misunderstood. He's a victim, a symbol of how real danger can wear the face of ordinary life. The villains themselves carry subtle echoes of past antagonists. Earl Unger's impatience, Burton Janigan's brutish physicality, Alice Ribbon's sharp intellect, and Peter Beaupre's cold leadership. These traits mirror Marv and Harry, but twisted into something sharper, more precise. The dynamic among them lacks humor because it isn't supposed to amuse, it's supposed to unnerve. But pay attention to their failures, and you'll see they each fall victim to the exact flaw their personalities foreshadowed. Earl charges in and is outsmarted. Burton relies on strength and falls into traps. Alice overanalyzes and misses the obvious. Peter believes he's always in control, and loses everything. Each downfall is tailored, symbolic, and satisfying in its construction. Then there are the props, the unsung heroes of any Home Alone film. In Alex's house, every item used in a trap was introduced beforehand, often without fanfare. The silver dumbbell, the rope, the trampoline, the pet cage, they're all shown in ordinary contexts before they become tools of defense. It's Chekhov's gun in full effect. And by doing so, the film rewards sharp-eyed viewers with the satisfaction of recognition. It's not just that Alex is creative, it's that he's paying attention to what others ignore. Just like we are, if we watch closely. One of the most charming Easter eggs is hidden in the scene where Alex is watching the neighborhood through his telescope. For a brief moment, his view pans over a kid wearing a knit cap, running through the snow. The visual resemblance to a young Kevin McAllister is uncanny. It's blink and you miss it quick, but it's a tip of the hat to the original. A small, respectful nod that ties the universes together without forcing the connection. It says, this world still exists. You just haven't looked this way before. Another clever reference comes during a police call. When Alex is trying to convince the authorities that something is happening, he's met with skepticism. The dispatcher jokes about kids watching too many movies, which is not only a meta-commentary on how many people misread children's intuition, but also a wink to how often films like this get underestimated. It's self-aware, tongue-in-cheek, and part of a long-standing Home Alone tradition of blending humor with meta-irony. There's also symbolic depth in Alex's illness. Chickenpox might seem like a convenient plot device to keep him home, but it's more than that. It's a symbol of vulnerability, visible, undeniable. Unlike Kevin's banishment, which was emotional and impulsive, Alex's isolation is forced upon him. It makes his victory sweeter. He wasn't just fighting off intruders. He was overcoming weakness, proving that even when he's physically compromised, he's mentally unstoppable. It's resilience in its purest form. The climax of the film is where all these threads converge. As each villain falls to Alex's defenses, their responses shift from annoyance to panic. And in these moments, the editing gets faster, the music more chaotic, but the framing of Alex stays calm. He is always shown in control, often bathed in light, while his enemies are cast in shadow. The visual storytelling reinforces the emotional arc. Alex is the protector now, and light follows him. Even the very last moment of the film carries symbolic weight. As Alex is celebrated and finally believed, he doesn't gloat. He doesn't show off. He simply looks around at his family, at the police, at his neighborhood, and smiles. It's a quiet victory. He doesn't need validation anymore. He knows who he is. And that final shot, held just a second longer than most would expect, invites the audience to feel that shift too. From disbelief to pride. From overlooked to unforgettable. In a film brimming with gadgets, traps, and laughs, it's easy to miss the carefully laid groundwork. But Home Alone 3 rewards the viewer who watches like Alex does. Closely, curiously, without distraction. It tells us that being small doesn't mean being powerless. That observation is strength. That every object, every movement, every decision carries meaning. And if we're paying attention, we begin to see the real magic beneath the mischief. You might think that Home Alone 3, released on December 12, 1997, was simply a harmless continuation of a beloved holiday franchise, a film tossed into theaters to capitalize on past successes. But the journey to its creation was anything but simple. It's a story that wins through casting controversies, unexpected illness, rewrites, and the daunting challenge of rebooting an iconic legacy without its iconic lead. Behind the cheerful booby traps and the snow-covered Chicago suburbs lies a production filled with unusual twists, moments that forever shaped the odd little corner this film carved into movie history. It all began with an idea that was never supposed to exist. When Home Alone 2, Lost in New York became a global hit, there was immediate interest in doing a third film. But fans and executives alike were expecting the return of Macaulay Culkin, the kid whose smirking ingenuity had become the face of the franchise. Yet, what many don't realize is that Home Alone 3 was the first movie in the series to be written after Macaulay Culkin had officially stepped away from acting. The young star's early retirement shocked Hollywood, and rather than recast Kevin McAllister, an idea that felt blasphemous to loyal fans, 20th Century Fox and writer-producer John Hughes decided to pivot. That pivot led to one of the most quietly bold creative decisions in the franchise, to create an entirely new protagonist, with no ties to Kevin or his mischief-prone family. Enter Alex Pruitt, played by then-newcomer Alex D. Linz. Casting Linz wasn't just about finding someone who could carry the film. It was about reimagining what made a child hero compelling in the first place. Hughes, known for his knack for capturing the emotional core of adolescence, wanted someone who felt real, less of a cartoon, more of a kid grounded in relatable struggle. Linz had that rare quality, a blend of vulnerability and spark that made audiences root for him without comparison. But casting wasn't the only major shift. The original Home Alone films were steeped in holiday spirit, with Christmas serving as a character in its own right. Snow, carols, decorations, all creating a nostalgic glow. Yet Home Alone 3 breaks that mold. Though it's still set in winter, the story moves away from the festive trappings. The decision was intentional. John Hughes wanted the new film to stand on its own, to focus more on espionage and suspense than seasonal hijinks. In fact, the entire spy plot was a strange departure, drawing inspiration from Hughes' admiration of James Bond films and classic heist thrillers. The villains were rewritten multiple times during production. Initially imagined as goofy crooks in the vein of Harry and Marv, they were later retooled into sleek, international operatives. The shift wasn't just for tone. It also opened the door to visual contrast. The polished, calculating bad guys in dark suits against the snowy, domestic quiet of suburbia added a layer of surreal tension that made the traps feel even more absurd and satisfying. Filming this dynamic, however, wasn't easy. Much of the film was shot in Chicago, in real neighborhoods transformed into wintry fortresses. But due to scheduling, the production didn't always align with the snowfall they needed. Rather than delay, the crew often used artificial snow, hundreds of pounds of it. At one point, entire streets were blanketed in white foam and potato flakes. It looked magical on camera, but the smell and texture in person were less than pleasant, according to cast members. Several scenes had to be reshot because the fake snow would blow unevenly or melt under hot set lights, giving the illusion of a bizarre weather shift mid-scene. The traps themselves, a core part of the franchise's DNA, posed another set of bizarre challenges. While Home Alone and its sequel had already set a high bar for trap creativity, the third film had to raise the stakes without feeling redundant. To do that, the crew took an almost Mythbusters approach to problem-solving. They built multiple rigs for each trap and tested them with stunt actors and props long before filming began. Some of the setups, like the spring-loaded barbell or the paint-drenched door, required precise timing. One misstep, and hours of cleanup followed before they could roll again. Alex D. Linz, being only 8 at the time, was involved in many of the stunt sequences, but not all. His stunt double, an older child of similar size, often stepped in for the more dangerous setups. Still, Linz insisted on doing as many of the scenes as he could, especially the iconic remote control car chase. That scene, where Alex pilots the toy through the streets and houses to outwit the villains, was a logistical nightmare. The car had to be outfitted with multiple camera rigs, including a custom-designed rig that provided a rat's eye view of the chase. The scene took 5 days to shoot and required more than 20 identical cars, most of which were destroyed in the process. Adding to the strange and wonderful backstory of this film is the presence of Scarlett Johansson, who played Alex's older sister, Molly. At the time, she was still years away from stardom, but her dry delivery and sarcastic edge hinted at the presence she would later bring to more mature roles. Interestingly, many of her scenes were cut or trimmed in the final edit. In one deleted sequence, Molly is shown helping Alex rig one of the traps, but the scene was removed to emphasize Alex's solo genius. Years later, Johansson would laugh in interviews about her experience working on the film, noting how surreal it was to get her start in a project filled with toy cars and booby traps. But not all behind-the-scenes stories were light-hearted. The production faced a unique challenge when several cast and crew members contracted chickenpox, the same illness Alex has in the film. For a brief period, the set was almost shut down. Ironically, the outbreak only fueled the film's authenticity, as some of the visual references to Alex's condition were drawn from real observations. Linz himself never got sick, but production had to adjust scenes to limit his contact with infected extras and background performers. It was a strange twist of life imitating art. Another curiosity lies in the film's score. While John Williams' iconic music was a defining feature of the first 2 films, he did not return for the third. Instead, composer Nick Glennismith was brought in to deliver something fresh, blending orchestral drama with whimsical mischief. Listen closely, and you'll notice that while the themes are new, there are tiny musical homages to Williams' work, hidden motifs that flutter through the background like ghost notes from the past. It was a subtle way of keeping the film tied to its roots, without relying too heavily on nostalgia. And then there's the case of the missing marketing. Despite being part of a billion-dollar franchise, Home Alone 3 received a surprisingly low-key release. Rumors swirled that the studio had doubts about its appeal without Culkin, and some even claimed that the film was originally planned as a direct-to-video release before getting bumped to theaters. While these rumors were never confirmed, what is known is that the marketing budget was slashed in the weeks leading up to the premiere. The result was a film that quietly landed in theaters, only to find its audience years later on home video and television reruns. One of the strangest facts of all? John Hughes, who penned the screenplay, had originally envisioned Home Alone 3 as the start of a new trilogy. His notes and early treatments suggest that Alex Pruitt would have aged with each film, tackling more complex scenarios as he matured, essentially turning the franchise into a suburban Bond-like saga with a young protagonist. But after the lukewarm box office response, those plans were quietly shelved. The idea of a kid growing into a full-blown spy comedy lead faded into obscurity, though traces of it can still be seen in later family films inspired by the Home Alone legacy. On set, the atmosphere was both demanding and delightful. The cast reportedly bonded over card games between takes. Linz became fast friends with Olek Krupa, who played Peter Beaupre, despite the fact that their characters were enemies. In one particularly amusing incident, Krupa accidentally triggered a trap during rehearsal, slipping on marbles and landing in a pile of paint cans meant for the next take. The crew burst out laughing, and Krupa emerged covered in paint, declaring, "At least it wasn't tar this time." That sense of playfulness extended beyond the cast. Director Rya Gosnell, making his debut in the director's chair after working as an editor on the original Home Alone, brought a meticulous eye to timing and pace. He understood how long a pause should last before a punchline, how a trap's reveal needed just the right beat before the chaos. Yet he also allowed room for improvisation. Several of Linz's reactions, especially his celebratory gestures after defeating a villain, were unscripted and came from real moments of joy. That authenticity is part of what keeps the film charming even when the plot gets wild. And finally, there's the legacy. Despite mixed reviews upon release, Home Alone 3 became a staple of late-night cable TV, a quiet comfort movie for a generation of kids who discovered it not in theaters, but on worn-out VHS tapes and Saturday afternoon reruns. Over the years, appreciation for the film's ambition and offbeat tone has grown. What was once seen as an outlier is now viewed by some as a standalone gem, flawed, strange, but deeply sincere in its intentions. In the end, Home Alone 3 is more than a forgotten sequel. It's a curious experiment, a movie that dared to change everything while keeping the spirit intact. And behind the scenes, it was a whirlwind of unexpected choices, secret ambitions, and bizarre accidents, all of which contributed to its unique, oddly endearing place in the cinematic landscape. There's something curious about watching Home Alone 3. It doesn't hit like the original, and it's not trying to. At first glance, it might even seem too polished, too structured, too different to share the same DNA. But as the film unspools its booby-trapped suburban ballet, scene after scene begins to feel more deliberate than expected, crafted with a quiet confidence that's often overlooked. Beneath the surface-level hijinks lies a sequence of pivotal moments, each laced with meaning, emotion, or sheer inventive flair, that shape how the film is experienced and remembered. One of the earliest scenes to leave a subtle but lasting impression is when Alex Pruitt, left alone at home with chickenpox, begins to notice unusual activity in his neighborhood. It's a slow build, an almost Hitchcockian suspense planted in an otherwise innocent suburban backdrop. The camera lingers on his face, catching the subtle rise of doubt, fear, and curiosity as he pieces together what the adults around him are too busy to see. This sequence does something quietly genius. It places the audience in Alex's shoes, reminding us of the frustrating powerlessness of being a child whose instincts are right, but whose words fall on dismissive ears. The emotional weight of that isolation resonates with anyone who's ever been underestimated, and that makes the moment stick. Then there's the toy car scene. It's arguably the most iconic in the entire film, and for good reason. On the surface, it's a fun action sequence, a remote-controlled decoy used to outsmart 4 highly trained international spies. But what makes it truly special isn't just the cleverness of the trap, it's the symbolism it carries. This isn't just a kid playing with a toy, it's a child using his world, his tools, his limited agency to manipulate a much larger, adult world of danger and crime. The toy becomes more than a gadget, it becomes an extension of Alex's resourcefulness, a metaphor for childhood imagination weaponized against real-world threats. It's a moment that straddles the line between fantasy and grounded tension, and the camera knows it. Tracking the car through impossible spaces, ducking under furniture, leaping over snowbanks. Every frame is a tribute to the idea that ingenuity can overcome intimidation, no matter how small the source. Another scene that often gets overlooked, but is vital to understanding the emotional arc of the film, is the phone call Alex makes to the Air Force recruitment office. His trying to report the criminals, and the absurdity of the situation adds a layer of comedic frustration. But what lingers beneath is deeper. A child going to extraordinary lengths to be heard, bypassing parental authority, local police, and even logic itself in pursuit of justice. It's hilarious and heartbreaking all at once, tapping into the universal desire of wanting someone, anyone, to take you seriously. The comedic tone doesn't dilute the meaning, it sharpens it. This is a kid who refuses to be powerless, and even when the adults hang up on him, we as the audience never do. One of the most emotionally revealing moments comes not from traps or gags, but from a simple interaction with Mrs. Hess, the grumpy neighbor. Throughout the film, she plays the archetypal crabby old woman, dismissive, rude, even antagonistic. But later, as Alex checks in on her and ultimately rescues her, something shifts. The moment when she sees the extent of his courage, how he risked his safety to protect someone who barely liked him, shatters the distance between them. Her softening gaze, her quiet thanks, even her shared annoyance with the villains, become small but powerful markers of human connection. It's a quiet payoff that brings emotional warmth to a film largely driven by slapstick chaos. Speaking of chaos, the actual trap sequence, the extended, multi-room gauntlet that Alex designs, is one of the most technically impressive and narratively satisfying moments in the movie. Structurally, it mirrors the previous films, yes, but it introduces new elements of strategy. Here, we see not just the defense of a home, but the full-on dismantling of the enemy's operation, piece by piece. Each villain is taken down in a method tailored to their weaknesses. The overconfident Peter, the precise Alice, the brutal Earl, the anxious Burton. These aren't just random slapstick bits. They're cleverly orchestrated takedowns that reflect character dynamics. It's personal, specific, and satisfying in ways that are easy to miss if you're just watching for the laughs. But amidst the gags, paint, feathers, explosions, there's a unique shift that occurs as the villains begin to break down. Their cool, professional exteriors slowly crumble into frustration and panic, and that inversion is exactly what makes the climax so rich. We're watching not just physical collapse, but psychological collapse. The kid wins not because he's stronger or faster, but because he understands their overconfidence. He exploits their blind spots, uses their predictability against them. The tension of earlier scenes finds release not just in slapstick, but in poetic justice. One of the most fascinating moments, though, comes near the end, when Alex's mother arrives home. She sees the wreckage, the disarray, the chaos left in the wake of her son's war. But instead of scolding or disbelief, there's awe, pride even. It's a rare moment in a child-centric film where the adult finally sees the child as an equal, not in age, but in capability. That subtle beat between them, that shared understanding, speaks volumes. It's not a hug-and-cry Hollywood ending. It's better. It's quiet, knowing, and completely earned. Now, if we look beyond the narrative to how audiences reacted to these moments, there's an interesting split. Upon release, many critics dismissed the film as derivative, even unnecessary. But among younger viewers, especially those who discovered the film outside of its theatrical run, there's a strong emotional attachment. These scenes, these choices, resonated because they didn't rely on the nostalgia of Kevin McAllister. They built something new, and in doing so, reached a different audience. One who saw themselves in Alex's quiet fight for control in a world too big to listen. And let's not forget the impact of the quieter moments. The scenes where Alex simply watches the snow fall, his face pressed against the cold window glass, the camera lingering as if time is stretching. Those beats create mood, atmosphere, space to breathe in a genre that often forgets to pause. They remind us of the loneliness of childhood, the waiting, the boredom that can feel endless when sick or scared or both. These are the moments that give emotional depth to the broader story. Moments that say, yes, this is funny, but it's also a story about being alone and learning you're enough. Thematically, Home Alone 3 circles around a few key ideas: the resilience of children, the blindness of adults, and the absurdity of underestimating someone simply because they're small. And those themes echo again and again through its key moments. Whether it's the government agent scoffing at Alex's intel, the neighbors ignoring his warnings, or the villains assuming they'll easily outwit a kid, the film repeatedly sets up expectations, only to smash them down with charm and wit. In a landscape of late 90s family films, Home Alone 3 dared to be different. Not louder, not brighter, just different. Its best scenes don't shout. They whisper. They grin. They outsmart. And when you step back and look at how those moments build upon one another, it becomes clear. This isn't just a slapstick caper. It's a clever, emotionally tuned story about belief. Believing in your instincts, your intelligence, and your ability to stand up when it matters most. Even now, years later, these key moments stand as a testament to the idea that small stories, told well, can leave a big impact. And in the case of Home Alone 3, it's those moments of heart, precision, and quietly layered tension that shape its legacy far more than its label as a sequel ever could. While Home Alone 3 might not have carried the same iconic weight as its predecessors upon release, there's something undeniably fascinating about how it was made, how every frame, every trap, every comedic beat was engineered with meticulous care and a sense of experimentation that often gets overshadowed by the shadow of Kevin McAllister. Behind the youthful charm of Alex D. Linz and the cartoonish downfall of 4 international spies lies a production that balanced practical effects with emerging technology, comedic rhythm with visual precision, and nostalgia with the boldness of reinvention. The journey to making this third installment was, from the beginning, a departure in spirit and process. John Hughes returned to write the script, but this time, the approach was different. Instead of revisiting the formula of Kevin in a big house with the wet bandits, Hughes decided to reshape the core idea entirely. What if the danger wasn't petty burglary, but international espionage? What if the antagonists weren't clumsy crooks, but highly trained operatives? That shift alone introduced a level of complexity to the film's tone, and with it came a host of creative and logistical challenges. The first of those was finding a new lead. Casting Alex D. Linz was not just about finding a cute face or a convincing young actor. It was about finding someone who could carry nearly the entire film on his shoulders. The movie required Alex to be funny, vulnerable, inventive, and emotionally grounded all at once. And what makes Linz's performance so remarkable is how naturally he inhabits the role. Behind the scenes, the crew noted his ease with long shooting days, his natural timing, and his uncanny ability to deliver comedic beats with sincerity. Unlike many child actors, he didn't play for laughs, he played for truth. And the laughs came anyway. But performance alone wouldn't carry this film. The production design had to match the elevated stakes. Instead of a cozy, Christmas-lit wonderland, the team created a snowy, suburban chessboard, each house, each room, each sidewalk becoming a piece of a larger puzzle. The filmmakers worked closely with the art department to ensure that every space could double as a trap-filled battleground without losing the authenticity of a real neighborhood. That balance, between realism and theatricality, was a central goal for the production team. Perhaps the most impressive element of Home Alone 3's production lies in how it approached the traps. These weren't just copied from the previous films, they were designed from scratch, many of them tailored to reflect Alex's personality, interests, and available resources. The remote control car wasn't just a prop, it was a character in itself, designed and operated with such precision that it required a small team of technicians to choreograph its every move. One of the more ambitious sequences involved the car moving through several rooms, evading obstacles and streaming video footage back to Alex. A technical marvel for its time, blending practical puppeteering, radio control, and clever cinematography. To capture the action, the cinematography leaned into a more kinetic style than previous entries. Cinematographer Julio Macat, who had worked on the original Home Alone, returned with an evolved vision. He wanted the camera to move like Alex's imagination, fluid, curious, and always a step ahead of the villains. This meant low angles that mimicked a child's point of view, long tracking shots that followed the flow of traps being set off, and carefully timed zooms that heightened comedic tension. It's easy to take for granted, but timing those camera moves with the practical stunts required an almost dance-like coordination between departments. And speaking of stunts, Home Alone 3 pushed its physical comedy to another level. The film's villains, played by Olek Krupa, Rya Kihlstedt, Lenny Von Dolan, and David Thornton, did more than just get hit and fall over. Their performances were rooted in precision, almost like ballet dancers of slapstick. The production hired professional stunt coordinators to ensure each gag landed both safely and hilariously. Some of the most jaw-dropping stunts, like the electric fence, the paint can catapult, or the parrot-led chaos, were rehearsed and tweaked over several days. Rya Kihlstedt even performed many of her own stunts, embracing the physicality of her role in ways that surprised the entire crew. But perhaps one of the most overlooked technical achievements of the film is how it blended old-school practical effects with subtle digital enhancements. At the time of production in the mid to late 90s, CGI was becoming more accessible, but it was still used sparingly and cautiously in live-action comedies. In Home Alone 3, the filmmakers chose to rely on practical setups, real props, real explosions, real snow, but they didn't shy away from digital tools when needed. For instance, the thermal imagery sequences viewed by the villains, as they search for the stolen microchip, were a composite of infrared filters and post-production effects. It gave the film a tech-savvy edge that fit its spy thriller undertone. Weather posed another constant challenge. The film was shot in Chicago during actual winter months, and while the snow adds to the movie's charm and atmosphere, it was a logistical nightmare for continuity. The crew had to contend with melting snow, freezing rain, and sudden blizzards, all of which impacted shooting schedules. In several scenes, artificial snow was used to maintain consistency between shots. The production team even used refrigerated snow blankets and foam-based snow cannons to recreate natural-looking snowfall indoors and on sets. It may sound small, but getting snow to fall the right way on camera, soft, slow, and picturesque, is a science in itself. Then there's the music. Scored by Nick Glennismith, the soundtrack of Home Alone 3 weaves between whimsical and urgent, capturing the blend of comedy and covert action that defines the film. Glennismith, taking over from John Williams, had the unenviable task of stepping into iconic shoes, and yet, he brought a fresh sound that mirrored Alex's world. The use of light strings, playful percussion, and mischievous motifs gave the traps a rhythmic heartbeat, one that matched the tempo of the physical comedy perfectly. His score knew when to vanish into the background and when to burst forward, and that balance allowed the emotional moments to shine all the more brightly. Even the editing deserves applause. Rya Gosnell, who had served as editor on the previous Home Alone films before making his directorial debut with Home Alone 3, brought a unique advantage. He knew how the series worked from the inside out. His editing choices created momentum without ever rushing. He allowed for breathing room during Alex's quieter moments, but knew how to accelerate pace as the traps kicked in. The transition from setup to payoff, so crucial in comedy, was honed to near perfection. The montage of trap setting, for example, is edited like a symphony, each sound, each beat, each visual gag timed with an almost musical rhythm. One of the more surprising production anecdotes involves the choice of the parrot. The script initially called for a more generic pet companion, but the decision to cast a talking parrot added a layer of personality to Alex's world. This wasn't just comic relief. The parrot became an active participant in the defense of the home, aiding in distractions, stealing keys, and adding unexpected chaos. Training the bird for its specific cues was no small feat. It required a specialized animal handler, custom-built perch rigs, and multiple parrots to fulfill different actions on screen. The parrot's lines were recorded separately and dubbed in post-production with exaggerated clarity, creating a unique audio signature that broke up scenes with memorable flair. All these elements, performance, design, cinematography, effects, sound, came together under a production schedule that was tighter than expected. Despite the scale of the film, the studio wanted it turned around efficiently, without sacrificing quality. That meant long hours, night shoots, and a constant juggling act between departments. Yet, if you watch the film closely, you'll see very few corners cut. Each scene, even the quieter ones, feels composed, considered, and lived in. And that speaks to the larger achievement of Home Alone 3. It didn't aim to replace the original. It sought to reimagine what Home Alone could be. And in doing so, it opened the door to new kinds of storytelling within a familiar framework. The film's production was a playground of problem-solving, creative invention, and quiet ambition. It may not have made waves at the box office, but behind the scenes, it was a small-scale triumph of craft and cleverness. Sometimes, technical achievement doesn't mean groundbreaking CGI or massive set pieces. Sometimes it means using everything at your disposal: props, lighting, timing, sound, to turn a toy car and a chickenpox-stricken kid into a story that moves, surprises, and entertains. And in that way, Home Alone 3 is more than just a sequel. It's a showcase of how ingenuity behind the camera can make magic on screen. On the surface, Home Alone 3 might seem like a light-hearted kids' comedy full of booby traps, pratfalls, and international spies. But buried beneath the snow-dusted laughs and slapstick chaos is a surprising current of themes and symbolism that enriches the experience in unexpected ways. As the story unfolds, we're not just watching a clever child outwit a gang of criminals. We're witnessing a deeper narrative about agency, overlooked voices, and the evolving nature of home, family, and trust in a world that increasingly underestimates the power of youthful resilience. From the very first scenes, the theme of being underestimated pulses throughout the story. Alex Pruitt, a young boy recovering from chickenpox, is dismissed by everyone around him. His parents caught up in their own pressures, his siblings absorbed in their worlds, and most crucially, the adults who refuse to believe his warnings. That underestimation is not just a personal conflict. It becomes the core obstacle he must overcome. It echoes a broader societal habit: how often the observations, voices, and perspectives of children are brushed aside in favor of adult logic or convenience. Alex's journey isn't just about defending his home. It's about reclaiming his credibility and proving that insight and bravery aren't reserved for grown-ups. This dynamic sets the stage for a recurring motif throughout the film: surveillance and perception. The microchip hidden inside a remote control car is the literal object of desire, but symbolically, it becomes a vessel of visibility. Who sees what, who's being watched, who's ignored. The international spies rely on technology and covert surveillance to track their target, while Alex relies on instinct, cleverness, and homegrown innovation. His setup of cameras and monitors becomes a counter-surveillance system, a child's answer to an adult game of espionage. It's a potent contrast: the cold, calculated surveillance of the villains versus the playful, intuitive observation of a boy. In a way, the film pits two views of the world against each other, one that treats people as targets, and another that sees things as interconnected puzzles waiting to be solved. That symbolic tension between childhood innocence and adult paranoia plays out visually as well. The snow-covered neighborhood, so serene and suburban, masks a battleground of ideology. On one side, a quiet home filled with family routines, toys, and comfort. On the other, seasoned criminals who disguise themselves to blend into American domestic life. The snowy landscape becomes a blank canvas, one where the safety of home is pitted against the infiltration of external threats. And in the middle stands Alex, a child who, unlike his oblivious neighbors, sees the cracks in the facade. The white snow is more than seasonal decor. It's a veil that hides danger, but also amplifies the purity of Alex's motives. His traps are not violent. They're creative, symbolic gestures of protection and wit. They don't aim to harm. They aim to delay, confuse, and reveal. One of the most poignant aspects of the story is how it frames the idea of protection. Not just physical protection, but emotional protection as well. In the absence of adult intervention, Alex steps into a protector role, not out of rebellion but out of necessity. That transition from needing protection to providing it mirrors a universal childhood experience. Those first moments when you realize the world is bigger, messier, and sometimes scarier than you imagined, and you begin to take on responsibilities once foreign to you. It's a subtle coming-of-age arc wrapped in comedic action. And while Alex doesn't say it outright, his actions suggest a desire not just to be believed, but to be trusted with the truth. In that sense, the film quietly advocates for a more inclusive trust between generations, a reminder that children aren't just learners. They're observers, creators, defenders in their own right. This emotional thread is reinforced by another symbolic layer: illness and isolation. Alex's chickenpox initially isolates him from school, from routine, and from the outside world. It's a condition that literally marks him, red spots that signal vulnerability and invisibility. And yet, that forced solitude becomes his advantage. It's only because he's confined to the home that he notices the suspicious behavior of the spies. His illness, meant to render him helpless, ironically becomes his source of empowerment. The film doesn't treat the chickenpox as a throwaway plot device. It becomes a metaphor for how perceived weakness can evolve into unexpected strength when circumstances demand it. Digging deeper, the choice of villains, for international spies working for a North Korean terrorist organization, might at first seem like an exaggerated plot twist, but it's layered with social commentary that mirrors late 1990s anxieties. This was a time when fears of foreign infiltration and espionage were simmering in public consciousness, shaped by global politics, technological paranoia, and media-fueled suspicion. By placing those threats inside a suburban American neighborhood, the film blurs the line between global conflict and domestic tranquility. It asks, albeit in a humorous, child-friendly way, what happens when the world's conflicts come knocking at your door? What happens when the enemy doesn't wear a uniform or speak a different language, but instead blends into the fabric of everyday life? Within that question lies another symbolic thread, the vulnerability of home. In most films, the home is a safe haven, a retreat. But Home Alone 3, like its predecessors, challenges that notion. It portrays the home as a space constantly in flux, one that must be defended and redefined. Alex doesn't just defend his physical house, he reclaims its emotional value. His traps are not just mechanical, they're symbolic gestures to maintain order, identity, and warmth in the face of intrusion. And as each trap is sprung, each villain outwitted, Alex isn't just reclaiming space, he's rebuilding the sanctity of his childhood, piece by piece. Another powerful theme woven through the story is the nature of belief, what it means to be believed, and what it means to believe in yourself. Adults in the film repeatedly dismiss Alex's concerns, echoing a familiar frustration for many young viewers who feel silenced or overlooked. But the film doesn't let that dynamic sit idly. It forces the adults to confront their own blind spots, especially when confronted with undeniable evidence. The payoff comes not just in the villain's capture, but in the shift of perception. Alex goes from being a kid with chickenpox to a hero in his own right. And that transformation isn't just external, it's internal, a narrative of self-empowerment that resonates far beyond the snow-covered streets of his neighborhood. Even the use of technology within the film offers layered commentary. Alex's embrace of gadgets and home surveillance mirrors the growing presence of tech in everyday life during the late 90s. But while the spies use tech to manipulate and extract, Alex uses it to understand and protect. It's a reflection of generational adaptability, how the younger generation often engages with technology not as a weapon but as an extension of curiosity and play. The remote control car becomes a metaphor in itself, a seemingly innocent toy that becomes a tool of justice and truth. It speaks to the idea that innovation isn't just about invention, it's about intent. And then there's the theme of duality, the idea that every moment, every object, every character contains more than what's visible on the surface. The car that holds the microchip is a child's toy and a global threat. The parrot is a pet and a co-conspirator. The snow is a blanket of peace and a cover for chaos. Even the villains are dual-faced. They're cunning agents, but also buffoons undone by their own underestimations. That duality speaks to a broader truth the film toys with, that life is rarely simple, and the things we dismiss as ordinary often carry extraordinary potential. By the time the credits roll, Home Alone 3 leaves behind more than just laughter. It leaves questions about trust, about awareness, about how we value voices that don't carry authority but carry insight. It leaves the image of a child not just surviving but thriving in a world designed to ignore him. And in doing so, it plants its flag among films that, quietly, cleverly, embed social reflection within their entertainment. The comedy, the gadgets, the snowy streets, all serve a larger canvas, one that reflects our anxieties, our hopes, and our longing for a world where cleverness, kindness, and courage can triumph over chaos, no matter the age of the hero. And for a film often seen as the lighter, more playful entry in a beloved franchise, that's a legacy far more meaningful than a simple holiday laugh. From the moment the camera glides through the frosted streets of suburban Chicago, Home Alone 3 announces itself not merely as another slapstick comedy but as a carefully crafted visual journey where every frame, cut, and sound cue serves the story of a clever child defending his home. The film's opening aerial shot, swooping over snow-laden rooftops in a long take, immediately establishes both setting and tone. The neighborhood feels larger than life yet intimate, a world waiting to be explored from an 8-year-old's point of view. This sense of perspective carries through every choice in cinematography, editing, sound design, and music, all collaborating to transform the ordinary into something tinged with suspense and wonder. At the heart of the film's look is Julio Macat's cinematography, which leans into a palette of cool blues and soft whites, punctuated by warm pools of light emanating from windows and street lamps. These warm accents aren't just aesthetic. They symbolize the safety of home juxtaposed against the cold threat of intrusion. Macat often frames Alex Pruitt's world through low-angle shots, placing the camera at kid height so that doorknobs loom large and hallways stretch like canyons. This choice immerses the viewer in Alex's mindset, making every cupboard, stair, and hallway feel both navigable and fraught with potential danger. Inside the Pruitt household, lighting shifts as the story demands. Daytime sequences use high-key lighting to underscore Alex's boredom and the deceptive calm of suburban life, while the moment the spies arrive and shadows lengthen, the film slips into a more contrast-driven approach. Suspense builds as pools of light carve out pockets of uncertainty, encouraging viewers to squint around door frames and peer into corners, much as Alex does with his telescope. At night, practical lights, lamps, flashlights, the glow of a television screen, become active characters in the narrative, guiding our eyes and punctuating key trap-setting moments. Editing, under Rya Gosnell's precise eye, is another cornerstone of the film's storytelling. He intercuts Alex's methodical planning, close UPS of his hands rigging traps, slow pans across his improvised command center, with rapid-fire gags as each trap is sprung. The juxtaposition of measured setup and explosive payoff creates a rhythmic tension that echoes a musical score's verse and chorus structure. In scenes like the remote control car chase, Gosnell employs whip pans and match cuts to bridge spaces within the house. One moment we're in the living room, the next in the kitchen, yet the car seems to glide seamlessly, reflecting Alex's command over his environment. This kinetic editing not only keeps the energy high but also reinforces the film's theme of turning the familiar into a dynamic battleground. Sound design weaves through this tapestry with equal care. The creak of floorboards, the distant rumble of engines, the hiss of wires under tension. Every trap is announced by its own distinct audio signature. These sounds are more than comedic punctuations. They cue the audience's attention, building anticipation before the visual gag is revealed. When a paint bucket swings or a board snaps, the sound is mixed slightly louder than life, amplifying the impact without veering into cartoonish excess. Subtle ambient layers, the wind picking up outside, the hum of household appliances, ground the film in reality, so that when the action escalates, the contrast feels more thrilling. Nick Glennismith's score dovetails with these effects, dancing between playful motifs and brisk, suspenseful themes. His use of pizzicato strings during trap setups suggests the nimbleness of Alex's mind, while brassy accents at moments of triumph give his victories a triumphant flourish. Glennismith never allows the music to overwhelm the action. Instead, he treats the score as a partner, ebbing and flowing with the narrative's emotional currents. In quieter scenes, Alex tinkering by lamplight or peering out at the silent street, the music retreats to soft, atmospheric pads, letting the natural soundscape take center stage and reminding us of the stillness before the storm. Visually, the film embraces a blend of wide compositions and intimate close UPS. In establishing shots, we see the Pruitt house nestled among its neighbors, snow blanketing roofs and cars. These wide vistas remind us that Alex's world is part of a larger community, heightening the stakes when danger arrives. Yet in moments of personal struggle, Alex's frustration at being ignored or his silent concentration as he rigs a trap, the camera pushes in for close UPS, capturing the faintest shifts in expression. This contrast between the macro and the micro underscores the film's core paradox. A child alone in a vast world, whose small actions ripple outward with major consequences. The production design further amplifies this visual storytelling. Every room in the house was dressed to highlight its potential as both domestic haven and trap zone. A handy roll of duct tape, a jar of marbles, a pan of hot coals, all are casually visible in early scenes, planted so the viewers eye can register them before they become instruments of defense. Such placement isn't accidental. It follows the principle of Chekhov's gun, where any object introduced must eventually play a role. The film's spatial geography is carefully mapped so that viewers subconsciously catalog potential tools and pathways, turning each frame into a treasure hunt. When the traps finally spring, the payoff is as much a visual aha moment as it is a comedic climax. One of the most visually striking sequences is the attic showdown, where Alex finds himself cornered by the intruders. The attic's cramped, slanted angles contrast sharply with the open hallways below, evoking a sense of entrapment even as Alex prepares his final gambit. Light filters through small windows, casting dramatic slats of shadow across the floor. The camera lingers on Alex's determined face before cutting to tight shots of ropes and pulleys, emphasizing the mechanical ingenuity he's brought to bear. The collision of these elements, a claustrophobic setting, dramatic lighting, purposeful editing, elevates what could have been a standard child versus thief scene into a mini-masterclass in visual tension. Beyond the house, the film occasionally opens up to exterior set pieces that demand a different visual approach. The suburban streets, rolled out like stage backdrops, are shot with a mix of static wide shots and careful crane moves that track the remote control car's journey. These shots make the neighborhood feel both expansive and ordered, like a chessboard where homes stand in neat alignment. Yet when the car darts into shadows or spins around a corner, the camera pivots, following its unpredictable path and suggesting that beneath the surface calm lies hidden chaos waiting to emerge. Costume and color palettes also play into the visual storytelling. Alex's clothing, soft pastels and neutral tones, sets him apart from the villains, who are clad in darker, more tactical hues. When the spies shed their disguises, their black coats and sunglasses feel out of place in the winter landscape, marking them visually as outsiders. Even minor characters, like Mrs. Hess in her floral housecoat, contribute to the film's color story, reminding us of the warmth and eccentricity that Alex is fighting to preserve. In the soundscape, occasional diegetic music, songs playing on the radio or a television broadcast, serves as a contrast to Glennismith's score, rooting certain moments in reality and occasionally providing ironic counterpoints. For instance, a cheerful pop song might drift through a scene just before a trap goes off, heightening the surprise when chaos erupts. These choices underscore the film's love of juxtaposition, order versus disorder, the mundane versus the remarkable. Rya Gosnell's directorial vision ties all these elements together. Having cut the first two Home Alone films, he understood the franchise's DNA and consciously chose to evolve it. He prioritized a camera language that could match a child's imaginative leaps, blending whimsy with precision. His use of visual motifs, mirrors reflecting Alex's isolation, windows framing his watchful gaze, doorways as portals between safety and danger, creates a rich tapestry that rewards repeat viewings. Each frame is designed to tell two stories at once, the overt comedy and the underlying emotional journey. Even the film's pacing reflects its visual ambitions. Gosnell allows scenes room to breathe, lingering on quiet moments so that the sudden bursts of action feel all the more thrilling. He times each cut to coincide with musical beats or sound effect crescendos, giving the film a rhythmic pulse that keeps viewers engaged without exhausting them. The result is a movie that feels less like a sequence of gags and more like a single, cohesive visual experience. In the end, Home Alone 3 stands as a testament to how cinematic technique and visual storytelling can elevate a family comedy into something richer and more textured. Through careful cinematography, purposeful editing, nuanced sound design, and a score that dances between whimsy and suspense, the film transforms a suburban home into a layered battleground where a child's creativity meets professional menace. Director Rya Gosnell's vision, combined with the artistry of his collaborators, ensures that every trap, every shot, and every note of music works in concert to guide our emotions, sharpen our attention, and remind us that even the most familiar places can become arenas for wonder, and that true storytelling magic often lies in the details we almost miss. From the moment the first cameras rolled on that chilly Chicago backlot, there was a palpable sense that something special was unfolding among the cast and crew of Home Alone 3. You can feel it in the way Alex D. Linz and his on-screen siblings traded off lines with effortless timing, and in how the four operatives, Olek Krupa, Rya Kihlstedt, David Thornton, and Lenny Von Dolan, managed to play off one another's energy even under layers of makeup and faux professionalism. That chemistry didn't happen by accident. It grew from long rehearsals in trailer park-style family dinners, improvised rehearsals between takes, and genuine friendships that formed when the cameras were off. Alex Linz arrived on set as a thoughtful, curious 8-year-old, his face still freckled from summer, but already possessed of a performer's instincts. From day one he found a natural rapport with Scarlett Johansson, then an up-and-coming teen who played his big sister, Molly. Their dynamic was rooted in affectionate teasing. She'd snap at him for tracking snow onto the living room carpet, and he'd retort with a weary, "You don't get it, I'm homesick." In one early scene, Johansson ad-libbed a line about needing a break from the incessant squeaky cough, riffing on Linz's real-life struggle with his chickenpox mask. The director loved it so much he rewrote the scene on the spot. That small moment of give and take set the tone for the rest of the production, establishing a rapport that made their sibling rivalry feel authentic rather than manufactured. Off-camera, Linz and Johansson would spend afternoon breaks poring over storyboards, debating trap design logistics as if they were master strategists. Johansson, only 12 at the time, was fascinated by the mechanics of each gag, peppering the effects team with questions about how a bucket of tar could be rigged to drop exactly when the villain stepped into frame. Linz, wide-eyed, would listen intently, nodding as if preparing his next silver screen ambush. Their curiosity cemented a bond that translated into performances layered with genuine warmth. You can almost see them smiling at each other in the more tender moments, even as a paint can swing perilously close. Among the operatives, chemistry developed through late-night screening sessions and shared meals that doubled as post-op debriefs. Olek Krupa, Peter Beaupre, took to mentoring his fellow actors, drawing on his extensive theatre background to coach them on maintaining menace without slipping into parody. Rya Kihlstedt, Alice Ribbons, would linger after rehearsals to work through the precise beats of facial expression that signaled her character's simmering frustration, practicing a raised eyebrow in the mirror until it conveyed both intellect and arrogance. David Thornton and Lenny Von Dolan, who played the muscle in the group, found camaraderie in choreographing their pratfalls. They'd test different ways to tumble down a staircase, rating each take on a makeshift pain scale and laughing until their sides hurt. That spirit of friendly competition infused their on-screen interactions, so that when they bickered or beat each other up, literally, the jabs felt grounded in true rapport. The set dynamics extended beyond the actors. Stunt coordinators, prop masters, and animal wranglers became integral players in the film's family drama. The notorious parrot sequence, for instance, almost never made it into the final cut. The bird, trained to peck at a prop key, balked under hot studio lights until it was coaxed forward by whispered encouragement from its handler. Cast and crew held their breaths every time the camera rolled, and when the parrot finally performed on cue, the entire soundstage erupted into applause. That collective cheer not only sealed that moment in the movie, but also bonded everyone present, reminding them that even in a tightly scheduled studio shoot, magic could still happen.